My name is Dennis, and I have a problem. No, I'm not an anonymous alcoholic. Let's make it straight from the beginning. I'm not even public alcoholic. I nearly don't drink. My problem is different. I'm a developer. There are many questions I have in my head. What to pick? Angular or React? Polymer or Vue? Vanilla.js or Mint.js with chocolate chips? Now, when we are talking about writing CSS and JavaScript, is it right time to make it even and start writing HTML and JavaScript in CSS? There are many more questions like that I have in my head, but exactly these we won't be talking about today. Instead, I want to talk to you about us as human beings, us as developers. We developers are all very different. Some like CSS. Others prefer playing with the latest JavaScript framework. Some prefer aesthetics and hence enjoy skillfully designed websites. Others prefer building unique user experience all the way from the ground. But no matter our differences, there is one thing we all share in common, most of us. We all want to be professionally successful in whatever we are doing. And wish to be successful, to be the best, is not wrong by itself. This is how evolution works, right? But some people take this wish way too serious. In 1982, physician Robert Goldman posed a question to elite athletes in power sport that was sounding something like this. If I had a magic drug that would be so fantastic that if you take it once, you would win every competition you would enter for the next 5 years. But it would have one minor drawback. It would kill you 5 years after you took it. Would you still take this pill? More than 50% of the respondents said yes. Puzzled with this result, Goldman repeated the same experiment and asked the same question for the next 13 consecutive years until 1995. During all these years, the results were consistent. People were willing to trade their lives for just 5 years of success. We developers, of course, are not athletes. Frankly, a lot of us are as far from sports as it possibly could be. And thankfully, this pill doesn't exist. So we have to find our own way to professional success. We have to find what suits us. But even though we all have different paths to professional success, there are problems that are common to all of these paths that we meet in our day-to-day job. And exactly about those I would like to talk to you about today. We will try to see what those problems are. We will try to analyze them, and hopefully we'll try to see how to deal with those. Some modern physicists state that the universe around us doesn't really exist, and it's nothing more than just a huge computer simulation. So for the purpose of this talk, let's assume this is correct. So let's take a look at how an average developer could look like in the form of, let's say, JavaScript program. So it all starts here, life start. We are born and raised. And then comes our first developer's milestone. We get our first book on development. In my case, it was first edition of Designing with Web Standards by Jeffrey Zeldman. You enjoy the book and you want to go on. So you get into your first ever project. Probably for yourself or for a friend. Probably it was rubbish and probably you didn't get paid. But you really enjoyed the idea that you can do something once and immediately make it available for millions of users around the globe. So you wanted to go further. And you get your first job as a developer. And things look quite smooth and goes on and goes on. But there is something wrong. Take a look at our console. Our program starts raising errors. As any developer, we know that when our programs start throwing errors, we have to stop, debug it, and fix. So let's take a look what are the bugs of a program defining an average developer. There are only 3 in this list. There are many, many more, but exactly these 3 we are going to talk about today. And the first one on this list is perfectionism. I will show you some pictures now. I won't say a word. I'm just interested in your reaction to those. I will let this one stay on the screen for a while. This one is fantastic, isn't it? But, of course, this is not a scientific research. Not at all. But your reaction tells me that probably some of you consider yourselves to be perfectionists. I remember in 2013 when a company I was working at back then was about to merge with another company. I had a conversation with my back then boss about how this merge of the companies might affect my style of work. Dennis, he said, your style of work is like champagne. It's well thought, long processed, high quality, and expensive. The style of the company we are about to merge with is more like Prosecco. It's faster, it's cheaper, and probably a bit lower quality. We both know that. But at the end, when both drinks are poured in the glasses at a party, most people won't notice a difference. Even though later, this company decided that their front-end works on unicorns farting magic and they don't need front-end developer in-house, I still remember this dialogue as a good example of how work of a perfectionist and non-perfectionist is perceived by normal people. Yes, I used to think about myself as perfectionist. But whether we want it or not, perfectionists are a completely different breed when it comes to work. Non-perfectionists consider work to be just that, work. We perfectionists take work as a challenge. This is the way to express ourselves, to challenge ourselves. We take all or nothing approach. We do not notice any obstacles, any deadlines, anything before we get our perfect result. There is no room for mistake for perfectionists, so we do anything we can to avoid even slightest hint of criticism. And when the work is done according to how perfectionists intended it to be, this work can truly shine. So why exactly perfectionism is marked as a bug, moreover, the first bug of our system? Don't get me wrong, perfectionism is really good. But nowadays, psychologists differ 2 types of perfectionism. Positive or healthy perfectionism and negative, unhealthy perfectionism. Positive perfectionism is the moving force for a lot of industries because it allows you to achieve outstanding results in anything you have passion for. Wonderful when your dentist is perfectionist, or an architect that built the house you're living in was perfectionist. It's very good that Steve Jobs was such a perfectionist that even now the whole industry of portable devices is compared to what his company achieved many years ago. With his attention to details, he set the bar for the whole industry. But there is a pattern here. Perfectionism is always good when you are a consumer. Whether we want it or not, perfectionism, when you create things, can really stand in our way. The same Steve Jobs, as a classical example of perfectionist, was a very hard person to work with. In 1977, when he was working on Apple II computer, he had to pick a color for casing for this computer. The Plone company sent him the whole catalog of their beige colors, 2,000 shades. Not 2, not 20, not 200, 2,000 shades of beige. None were good enough for Steve Jobs. So he desperately wanted to develop his perfect beige color for his perfect computer. He was so obsessed with this idea that CEO of Apple, Michael Scott, back then, had to interfere and stop Jobs from doing that. Negative perfectionism can make people really, really angry when somebody challenges their ideas or the way they work. I will show you now a clip from a very well-known sitcom, Silicon Valley, that probably most of you are very familiar with, but this one really nicely illustrates what I mean now.
Richard, what's wrong? Nothing. Literally, it's all good. Come on.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Your roommates were right. You really hate spaces.
No. I don't. It's not hate. Hate's a strong word. Truth be told, I do have a slight preference for tabs, but that's only because I'm anal and because I prefer precision.
Well, not to pick a fight here, but if you really care about precision, wouldn't you use spaces? But whatever. Once it goes through the compiler, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, technically, yes. I guess I just don't understand why anyone would use spaces over tabs. Like, if it's all the same, well, why not just use tabs?
Because it could look different on other people's computers.
Tabs create smaller file sizes, all right? I run a compression company. Trust me, I've devoted my life to minimalizing file sizes. It's what I do. I mean, I do not get why anyone would use spaces over tabs. I mean, why not just use Vim over Emacs?
I do use Vim over Emacs.
Oh, God help us.
You spoiled this thing. She says, I use Vim over Emacs. So it's really funny, right? It's really funny, but that's true. That's how perfectionism affects our personal life. But negative perfectionism can take different shapes and different forms in our day-to-day job. We will be talking about three main ones. The first one is called perfectionist paralysis. We all are familiar with procrastination. So the problem is that different people procrastinate due to different reasons. Some are just tired. Some just want to make some mental shift. Perfectionists procrastinate for another reason. We are waiting for an ideal moment to start working on our ideal project. At least that's how perfectionists think about this process, okay? The reality is that perfectionists are just afraid to not achieve perfect result. This is just the fear of failure. And perfectionists just wait for a moment when they have enough strength to fight this problem, because perfectionists prefer working with tasks where they can be guaranteed that they achieve perfect result. But this overcomplifies everything, and they need some special moment. But let's assume, yes, of course, this ideal moment never comes before it's too late. We all know that. But let's assume miracles happen, and you've got your ideal moment, or simply a deadline is knocking at your door, for example. So you have to start working. And then we get into another problem with negative perfectionism that is called picking a detail. So, as I said, perfectionists prefer to work with small tasks where they are guaranteed to achieve perfect result. But the problem is that once they dive into this task, they dive so deep that they completely lose focus and overview of the project that is still living around this small task. Again, let's assume you have a wonderful project manager who is familiar with your style and reminds you from time to time that you have to deliver a result, right? And then we get to another problem that is called unnecessary task, or as I call it, a cherry on top. The moment you're ready to deliver your project, your feature, your application, whatever, an evil idea comes to your mind. This one might be improved. And you start with just taking a look. Another evil idea comes to your mind. This one is not hard. Should not take more than 10, 15 minutes. And you dive deeper. And deeper. And deeper. And at the end, you spend the whole day for something that at best doesn't bring value to the project. At worst, you run git reset hard because the feature is behaving unpredictably and the whole project is just working not as it is intended to be. Perfectionists never know when to stop perfecting things. So we see that negative perfectionism brings a lot of troubles into our lives, into the lives of those we are working with, and those who dare to live with us. What is the solution? Some sources state that we have to learn ourselves to not be perfectionists. But I said that perfectionism is really good. So I think that the solution is to learn ourselves to convert from this obsession-driven negative perfectionism into the positive perfectionism. What I mean? Let me tell you a story. By the end of 40, before establishing one of the most profitable and famous companies in the world, Henry Ford had established 2 other car companies and failed with both. Moreover, the management of the second car company, among this, had to push Ford off the company just 4 months after he established it. A lot of resources attribute these failures to Ford's craving for perfectionism. For example, the management of the second car company, that is now known as Cadillac, states that Ford was spending all his time perfecting the design of a car, constantly delaying production of the real car. But no matter the craving for perfectionism, the first cars of his third company, that is now known as the Ford Motor Company, were just on par with the competitors. Neither better nor worse, just average car. Because of that, Ford insisted on postponing production of those cars until they get perfected. By then, the investors had enough of Ford, so they insisted on implementing paradigm, make sale now, fix them later. Had it been not to the healthy attitude to perfectionism from the investors of Ford, the world might have never heard of Henry Ford. He would never be able to push his car into production, and instead would push his third company off the bridge, as he did twice before. In order to get a better overview on the difference between negative and positive perfectionism in development world, let's consider 2 statements. The first one, my product should be perfect. I'm not going to release, develop a feature, commit before I'm sure it is perfect. And another one, my product should be perfect, and this release, feature, commit moves me one step closer to this perfect result. With this example, it's really easy to see the difference between positive and negative perfectionism, healthy and unhealthy attitude. And it's really easy to see how negative perfectionism can really stand in our way. So we have to learn ourselves to implement this positive perfectionism attitude. We have to get rid of our all-or-nothing approach and instead opt for gradual improvement on the way to perfectionism. We also have to accept the fact that our products can live in any version. It can be alpha, beta, 0.1, anything. They should not be perfect from day one. They might be even incomplete. Stephen Hawking once said, one of the basic rules of the universe is that nothing is perfect. Perfection simply doesn't exist. If we insist on our craving for perfectionism, the negative attitude to it, we at least have to consume all the information we have in our industry to understand what is perfect, what is not. And then we tend to fall into the next bug of our system that is called imposter phenomenon. What phenomenon? You might be asking yourself now. That's true. Imposter phenomenon is the topic that until recently has not been very much spoken about in communities, in development communities. Nevertheless, scientific research shows that 2 out of 5 successful people constantly suffer from it, and up to 70% of the population experienced it at least on one stage at their professional career, at one stage. So this is the thing that is quite applicable to many people. Let me give you 3 statements. I don't ask you to raise hands now or anything. I just want you to think whether they are applicable to you or not. You think that your success in something is due to luck, timing, or any other external force rather than your knowledge or intelligence or hard working. You think that others might discover that you are not as skilled as they think you are. You think that others are more intelligent than you. Now, let me ask you, who thinks that at least something on this list is applicable to them? Raise their hands, please. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, and welcome. Welcome to the club of impostors. But let me congratulate you, because we're all in a good company. You think, why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? And I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this? Meryl Streep, actress, 389 nominations, 156 wins, 3 Oscars as Best Actress. I always feel like something of an imposter. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a writer. I've been fooling myself and other people. John Steinbeck, a writer. 27 books, Pulitzer Prize for fiction, Nobel Prize in literature. I still doubt myself every single day. What people believe is my self-confidence is actually my reaction to fear. Will Smith, actor, musician. 6 American Music Awards, 4 Grammys, 2 Oscar nominations as Best Actors. So technically, what imposter phenomenon is the feeling of being a fraud despite all evidence to the contrary. It's the inability to internalize your own achievements that leads you to the feeling of being less competent than the rest of the world believes you to be. When I was reading about this for the first time, I had my wow moment because I didn't even know that the feelings I had a name. But they had, actually, and quite established ones. Imposter phenomenon, or imposter syndrome, or imposterism, these are all the same. The first mention of this thing happened in the scientific paper from 1978 that was dedicated to high-achieving women in academics. That's true. For many years, scientific community believed that this phenomenon is highly confined to women in academics. But the very same scientists nowadays believe that this is much more universal feeling and might be even more problematic for men, simply because it's much harder for men to confess in feelings like insecurity or incompetence, and hence, men end up burying their fears, unable to unburden themselves and seek help. But what happens if we are not aware of imposter phenomenon, or we just don't care about it? Technically, from simple psychological discomfort of insecurity, it leads us straight to failure. Only a couple of years ago, I had several applications of to-read functionality in my portable devices, like Pocket, Flipboard, Instapaper, and I saved all the latest news from the development world, from web development, web design, and these things constantly brought me new information. Then there were online magazines like Smashing Magazine, A List Apart, Net Magazine. These constantly brought me the latest tutorials, how-tos, and just interesting articles from the industry. Then we have Twitter. Reading Twitter might be depressive on its own, because seeing so many talented people bragging about their achievements doesn't make imposter syndrome any better. But my story doesn't end up here. I also had RSS feeds, newsletters like JavaScript Weekly, HTML Weekly, and so on and so on. I also tried to watch all the recent videos from the recent conferences. So I tried to get as much information as I could, to read all the articles, but obviously enough, I could not read everything. In all this flow of information, I also had to do the work that paid my bills. So on one day, I figured out that I don't read those articles anymore. On the best days, I would just glance through the titles, pick some, and I would stay opened and usually untouched in my browser for days. So why did it happen like this? Why didn't I feel myself more competent after consuming all that information? The answer is that it was not me who was interested in all that information. It was my imposter syndrome pushing me to consume all that information so that I wouldn't feel myself an incompetent fraud. So what imposter syndrome really does is, instead of us pushing to learn new things that we can enjoy and use in our everyday life and everyday job, it pushes us into the state of frustration. But those who have experienced this feeling, I have a good news for you. The irony of imposter syndrome is that true frauds and idiots seem to rarely experience it. Or English philosopher Bertrand Russell put it in a more poetic way: the trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt. The interesting thing about imposter syndrome is that it's impossible to fight it. because you cannot really change it. You cannot be assured that you are the smartest guy in the room. You cannot be guaranteed that you're as competent as the rest of the world believes you to be. It's impossible to fight, but we can change our attitude to it. And the first step on this way is embracing imposterism. The interesting thing is that imposterism, as Pacific Standard Magazine once put it, is for many people a natural symptom of gaining expertise. And it makes total sense. Because when we gain expertise, we extend the perimeter of what we know while exposing ourselves to even more of what we don't. So next time you have this rush, you have this fear that you will be uncovered by your colleagues, if you feel that your imposter syndrome starts acting, do not rush to consume all the information you can find. Instead, just stop. Stop and enjoy. Because most probably this is the sign of you gaining expertise, of you gaining wisdom to realize that there is many more in this world, and in our industry in particular for us, to discover yet. Another advice I could give you is measure yourself with your own yardstick. It's very easy to be consumed by success of other people. But competing to others in our industry is the game impossible to win. Instead, try to compete to yourself. Where were you a year ago, 6 months ago? Can you see the difference? Can you track the progress? Can you see the achievements? If you start thinking like this, if you make this shift in your mindset, it will give you a much better overview of your own achievements, and it will help you better and easier internalize your own achievements and your own success. And last but definitely not least is communicate your fears. Neil Gaiman, award-winning author of comic books, movies, different books, has a wonderful anecdote to soothe anybody with the Imposter Syndrome. Some years ago, I was lucky enough to be invited to a gathering of great and good people, artists and scientists, writers and discoverers of things. And I felt that at any moment they would realize that I didn't qualify to be there among these people who had really done things. On my second or third night there, I was standing at the back of the hall while a musical entertainment happened. And I started talking to a very nice, polite, elderly gentleman about several things, including our shared first name. And then he pointed to the hall of people and said words to the effect of, I just look at all these people, and I think, what the heck am I doing here? They have made amazing things. I just went where I was sent. And I said, yes, but you were the first man on the moon. I think that counts for something. And I felt a bit better, because if Neil Armstrong felt like an imposter, maybe everyone did. So next time you feel afraid that your colleagues or your boss will figure out that you are not as competent as they think you are, tap into the knowledge that people around you might feel the same. Because spotting imposter syndrome in others is very hard, because those people who suffer from it usually do very good at their job. So when you have this feeling, think about this. Maybe people around you feel exactly the same. They feel inadequate as well. Maybe even your boss. The problem with imposter syndrome is that if we do not embrace it, if we do not accept and change our attitude to it, it forces us to work very, very hard for us to prove ourselves, and then we tend to end up in the next bug of our system. Long hours. Let me start with the raise of hands. I will ask you 3 questions. First one, have you ever worked long hours, at least once, like doing work the whole day and then extending it for some hours and maybe working after midnight, so you did design or development of something? How many of you, at least once? Oh, what a stupid question I have, huh? Now, the second question. How many of you do this on a regular basis? Raise your hands. Come on, don't be shy. Okay, thank you. Now the main question. How many of you, the day after putting these long hours, after, for example, developing or designing something after midnight, realize that everything that has been developed after midnight has to be tossed away because it's either buggy or is unpredictable or breaks the whole project? Please raise your hands. I am with you. Come on. We've been there. Thank you. This is great. The problem is that long hours is nothing new to developers, right? But I must admit, I have never heard of anybody on a deathbed saying something like, oh God, why was I working so little? Conversely, palliative nurses state that one of the most regretted things people mention on their deathbed is that they have been working too hard and too much. Still, long hours are inevitable in our community. We have to put long hours from time to time. So let's be honest. Long hours are not a bug per se. But there are two different types of long hours. The first one is temporary. This is the type of long hours that we put from time to time, for example, when a new technology is being released and we are just excited and we want to put these long hours in order to figure out how it works. Or, for example, around deadlines, because we all know how good we are with time estimations, aren't we? So this is the type of long hours that is typical for somebody who we would call a hard-working developer. But there is another type of long hours that is more permanent and much more dangerous. Perfectionism and imposter syndrome as problems, when they are not treated well, lead us straight to this category of long hours. And this is typical for somebody who we would call a workaholic. Now, it's kind of hard to spot the difference between hardworking and workaholic, right? But I like how Brian Robinson, acknowledged psychotherapist, puts it. Hardworking people usually have some balance in their life. They might sit at their desks and think about skiing, while workaholics are on the ski slopes thinking about work. Oh. But the question is, maybe we manage to be more productive during these hours? Maybe we achieve more during these hours? In the beginning of 1920s, an American company conducted research involving their own employees and figured out that 20 hours on top of average 40 hours per week, so 60 hours total, indeed increases productivity. 60 hours a week. But it takes only 3 to 4 weeks before productivity actually turns negative. The company conducting this research was Ford Motor Company, one of the earliest adopters of 40 hours a week. So the raise of hands we had, and this statistic shows that even though we are busy during these long hours, it doesn't mean that we are productive during these hours. Why? Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our common friend, brain. No matter the unexplored potential of our brain, in the simplest form, it still behaves like a muscle, even though it's not a muscle. But when we put long hours as any other muscle, our brain gets tired. When our brain gets tired, we are prone to making errors. In the world where we are craving for perfect result, where we want to achieve as much as possible, this leads us to mental recursion. It all starts with long hours, where we want to achieve more, to be more productive. Our brain gets tired, and hence we make errors. When we make errors, we cannot be satisfied with the result. We lack the feeling of accomplishment. In order to regain this feeling of accomplishment, what we do? We again put long hours to fix those bugs, and we have the mental recursion. So instead of making us more productive, what long hours really bring to our life is stress. But stress in its heavier forms like burnout are not only about productivity. Karoshi. In Japanese, it literally means death by overwork. According to different resources, in 2015, 10,000 people in Japan died solely by overwork. But even then, this term stands nowhere near another term, guolaosi. That technically means the same, death by overwork, but in Chinese. Every year, China loses about 600,000 people due to overwork. That results in 1,600 deaths every day. I'm not talking about people working with sharp objects or guns now. The majority of these people are white collars sitting in the offices and working in the offices. In order to understand why stress is so dangerous to us, we have to get a bit deeper into our friend brain. So when our brain detects stress, it sends signals all over our body to enable the protective mechanism. Among other things, this mechanism consists of two chemicals. The first one is adrenaline. The second one is the so-called stress hormone, cortisol. This couple is great. This couple helps us make fast decisions in these situations when we are really in danger. This couple is technically the same as putting important into your CSS. It overrides everything else. Wow, this was good, huh? So, no, I forgot what I have to say. I'm sorry. So, but this couple is really essential for our well-being. It might even kick this adrenaline kick to those hardworking developers to finish that one feature before deadline, right? So, this is essential, but exactly the same mechanism, when applied to our brain for prolonged periods of time, in particular due to stress, might severely damage our brain. And I don't mean mental health, I mean physically change our brain. Recent study in California, Berkeley, and Sweden state that this is what happens to our brain after stress. Amygdala region is increased, thinning of prefrontal cortex, shrinking of hippocampus, and the only question we have, what the heck does this mean? Let me translate this into the human readable language. This means premature aging of our brain, significant drop in learning abilities, and weakened memory. In order to make it ridiculously obvious, these three in group mean early mental disability. Isn't it fantastic? We work really, really hard. We try to do really good things. We learn new stuff. And the paycheck is early Alzheimer's or dementia. Fantastic, isn't it? We have to do something about this. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with simple ways of fighting stress, like physical activity or meditation. As simple things as, for example, chocolate or ultraviolet light that we lack, unfortunately, today outside. They might help you fighting stress. So these are well-known things. Today I want to talk to you about a bit different thing, about how to prevent our stress. Let's talk about Harvard. We all know about Harvard University, right? It's like 133 Nobel laureates, 35 current billionaires, 8 presidents of the United States. It's the birthplace for Microsoft and Facebook. It's one of the most selective universities in the world. In 2017, only 5.8% of the applicants gained admission to the university. Because during the process of admission, another things that are not directly related to studying are considered, like achievements in music, achievements in sport, startup business that you own, and so on and so on. So it wouldn't be an exaggeration to state that anybody studying at Harvard should live a completely crazy life, dedicating every minute of his or her life to either learning or self-development. And a lot of them do. In 2004, students had a meeting with the management of the university where they raised some concerns they had. The students raised some concerns, and quite interesting concerns, I must say. Some students wanted to take 2 full-size 4-year courses and pass them simultaneously. And other students wanted to take full-size 4-year course and pass it within 3 years. They wanted the management to allow them doing that. What a wonderful thing should it be for management to hear this. Students wanted to do as much as they could while they are at Harvard. But instead of being impressed, Harry Lewis back then the dean of undergraduate school of Harvard, sent a letter to the students entitled, "Slow Down, Getting More Out of Harvard by Doing Less." In this letter, Harry Lewis appealed to the students that instead of increased mental pressure, what they really need is to slow down. Moreover, he advocated for taking some time off Harvard, and not just an evening or a week. He suggested students to take the whole term or a year off Harvard. Obviously enough, the parents were furious, reasonably thinking that a year off Harvard would mean for their kids that they completely forget what they had learned before, or they might not be even willing to go back to Harvard after all. But as statistics shows, 96% of those who took the whole year off Harvard, 96% came back, gained readmission, and successfully graduated Harvard. Harvard calls it slow learning. Drew Faust, the president of Harvard University, says, "College can help you learn how to think more than what to think." How to think more than what to think. And now I suppose this is exactly what we developers, any community of developers, really lacks. We have tons of information that tells us what to think, even if it's titled "How to." But what we really need is to learn ourselves how to think. But for that, we need what Harry Lewis called enough breathing room. But our perfectionism, our insecurity, and our long hours simply occupy all of this breathing room that we need. Today we have seen that a problem defining an average developer has a lot of bugs. We have covered just the tip of the iceberg. There are many more. But the problem is that we cannot postpone fixing these bugs for later, because unlike our products, our lives have no versions other than 1.0. And we have to debug and fix things straight in production. Does our industry need more professionally successful developers? Frankly, I don't know. But what is certain is that our industry needs more healthy, more happy developers. My name is Dennis. I'm a developer, and because of that, I have a lot of problems. But as psychiatrists say, acknowledging a problem is the first step to mental health. Today, I have shared my personal problems with you, and I'm sure that some of those resonated with some of you. Because even though we are all different, it doesn't mean that we cannot have similar problems. Debug yourself often, and stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure whether we can ask questions or anything. I'm not sure how this works. Now, I have been away from Plone conferences for so many years that I completely forgot how it's done here. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now, or you can ask them at the party. I will be there. So, any questions now so far? Yeah, let's turn this off. And no questions. Oh, I hope I didn't depress you that much. Oh, Godfrey. It's always fun to talk to Godfrey. Hello, man.
Hey, Dennis. I enjoy that so much.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that we are at least two of us speaking of our internal bugs. So thank you a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, those who want to figure out, to know more about imposter syndrome and this thing, because this is probably the least covered topic, my article about this problem has been published in Smashing Magazine yesterday. So you can check this out and read more about this. Yeah.
Hey, how do you promote self-debugging in a context of a team?
Yes, I actually had... I'm sorry. Yes, I spoke about the same topic at Smashing Conference yesterday, and I've got the same question, technically. A guy came to me and said, like, okay, yeah, I get the idea of self-debugging, but what do I do within a team? Because we have developers leaving the company because they are overburned, and like they burn over, and they just don't want to do anything. So this is the real problem. The point is that, as I said, we are all different, right? So you have to, first of all, you have to make this decision for yourself. Whether you want to be just one of those developers who follow the company and just you're not satisfied and you're stressed about this, but you have to do this. I get that idea because we all have to pay the bills, right? But first of all, you have to make this decision for yourself, whether you want to be to earn a lot of money and be successful, or you want to be healthy and happy. When you work in a team, the best thing you can do is communication. You have to talk to your colleagues. You have to talk to your boss and kind of build this in the team. If you communicate, because the whole team is interested in building healthy community within this team, right? This is community as well. So if you communicate this, if you say that, well, I think that this thing we do wrong, we have to, for example, set up the tickets to the gym, for example, because we are stressed, so we have to sort of do something to fight our stress. Sports is really good medicine for that. So you just raise this question. You discuss this with colleagues, and if you get support from the colleagues, you just talk to the management. If you mean the long hours because, for example, your boss says that you have to work 24/7, then if your boss thinks that, probably you have to prove him that he doesn't really want to work with the people who are willing to work 24/7, because 24/7, we saw that productivity is dropping just 3 to 4 weeks after you increase it, right? So if you work long hours for long, if you take the progress of the project in the long term, and there is research on this topic as well, it's noticeable that if you, for example, work 8 hours a day, you can, I think there was research that it's enough, 6 months of 60 hours weeks for the team. It takes 8 months for a team to finish the project with 60 hours a week, right? But it takes only 4 months for the same team that works 40 hours a week. So the productivity drops, and then you produce the new bugs that you have to fix later as well. So within the team, only communication can help, but you have to start with yourself and answer this question to yourself, whether you want to. I get the idea because I talk to a lot of young developers. I'm unfortunately not that young already. So I started thinking about my health. But young developers think wow, we have so many years ahead. I don't care about health. What are you talking about? Trust me, 35, you start thinking about health. If you don't, then health starts thinking about you. This is inevitable. So first of all, answer this question to yourself. And I can tell you that I still do long hours from time to time. Before coming to Barcelona last week, I was preparing the project for a release on Friday. My flight is on Saturday, 8 a.m. My train to airport is 6 a.m. I start working with the project 5:30 p.m. on Friday. Damn. I didn't get my sleep that night. So I went to Barcelona completely exhausted. But I knew that I have to put those long hours now so that I avoid putting them while I'm in Barcelona. So this is an inevitable thing as well. But if you do this on a regular basis, this is something wrong. Then you have to fix this. I'm sorry this was extensive answer. Yeah. Any questions that require a shorter answer? Yes, no, preferably. Anyway, I'll be at the party, so yes, I will be happy to talk to all of you, and exceptionally will be happy to talk to my old friends, literally old. I'm looking at you guys. Yes, thank you.